By late 2024, the Liberal Party was a house of cards on the verge of collapse. Justin Trudeau's decade-long reign had left Canada battered, inflation soared to 7.8%, housing prices locked out an entire generation, and scandals like ArriveCan and SNC-Lavalin had eroded public trust to a historic low of -35 net favorability for Trudeau. The Liberal brand was toxic, and Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives were riding a tsunami of support. Polls from August 2024 showed the Conservatives with a 20-point lead, commanding 55% of voter intention, and a net favorability of +5 for Poilievre. His fiery rallies packed arenas from Brampton to Calgary, drawing thousands of fed-up Canadians chanting for common-sense solutions like axing the carbon tax and building affordable homes. The Liberals knew they were staring down electoral oblivion. Their response? Not policy reform or honest campaigning, but a sinister plot to manipulate the narrative and steal the election. The corruption began here, with a panicked Liberal elite willing to do anything to hold on to power. Enter the pollsters, the hired guns of the Liberal machine. By early 2025, a miraculous shift appeared in the numbers. Angus Reid Institute, Ipsos, Abacus Data, Ledger, and Focal Data pollsters with deep ties to Liberal-friendly media and corporate interests began churning out data showing a Liberal resurgence. Angus Reid's March 17 poll claimed the Liberals, now led by Mark Carney after Trudeau's January resignation, had surged to a 5-point lead. Ipsos followed, declaring Carney the preferred Prime Minister for 45% of Canadians, while Poilievre plummeted to 32%. Abacus Data and Ledger piled on, with the CBC's poll tracker showing a 7-point Liberal edge by April. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a coordinated assault. The Liberals, through backroom deals and funding funneled via government contracts and friendly media outlets like CBC and Global News, leaned on these pollsters to cook the numbers. How? By rigging the methodology, selective sampling targeted urban, Liberal-leaning online panels, ignoring rural and working-class Conservative strongholds. Leading questions framed Carney as a savior against U.S. tariffs while smearing Poilievre as a Trump clone, and strategic timing flooded the media with pro-Liberal polls just before advance voting to demoralize Conservative supporters. The corruption was blatant. Angus Reid's non-profit status masked its corporate funding, Ipsos executives boasted Liberal connections, and Abacus's CEO David Coletto openly cheered Carney's fresh leadership. This wasn't polling. It was propaganda, bankrolled by a corrupt Liberal machine desperate to rewrite reality. The Angus Reid Institute, cloaked as a non-profit research foundation, was a linchpin in the Liberal conspiracy. Founded by Dr. Angus Reid, who sold his firm to Ipsos in 2000 for $60 million, the institute claimed impartiality, but was funded by murky, project-based grants from Liberal-friendly organizations. In March 2025, their poll claimed a Liberal surge to a 5-point lead, a stark reversal from the Conservatives' dominance. How? By using skewed online panels like the Angus Reid Forum, which oversampled urban Liberals and underrepresented rural Conservative strongholds. Their March 17 poll, timed to coincide with U.S. tariff fears, framed Carney as a steady hand, while questions smeared Poilievre as a disruptive Trump ally. With media outlets like CBC amplifying their data, Angus Reid's polls demoralized Conservative voters, contributing to a 2% drop in turnout in key ridings. Their corruption lay in their selective methodology and strategic timing, designed to prop up the Liberal narrative and crush Poilievre's momentum. Ipsos, the Canadian arm of a global research giant, was a loyal soldier in the Liberal cause. Led by executives with ties to Liberal insiders, Ipsos churned out polls for Global News, a network propped up by $600 million in Liberal media subsidies. Their April 2025 poll claimed Carney was the preferred Prime Minister for 45% of Canadians, with Poilievre trailing at 32%, a shift that defied earlier trends. Ipsos used leading questions, like "Do you trust Mark Carney to handle U.S. trade threats?" to inflate his appeal, while their online I Say panel skewed toward Liberal-leaning demographics. Their April 15 YouTube video, hosted by CEO Darrell Bricker, admitted a slight rise in Conservative support but buried it under headlines of Liberal dominance. Ipsos's corruption was in their blatant bias, tailoring polls to fit the Liberal script and flooding media with fraudulent numbers to sway undecided voters. Their role was pivotal in creating a bandwagon effect, helping the Liberals secure 169 seats. Abacus Data, led by CEO David Coletto, positioned itself as a hip, modern pollster but was a key player in the Liberal heist. Their polls, like the April 9 survey showing a 6-point Liberal lead, were strategically released to maximize media impact. Conducted with 1,900 adults via the Lucid platform, Abacus's surveys used weighted samples that overrepresented Ontario and Atlantic Canada, Liberal strongholds, while downplaying Prairie support for Poilievre. Questions emphasized Carney's economic expertise and framed Poilievre's policies as risky, exploiting Trump's tariff threats to shift focus from affordability. Abacus's rapid-fire polls, including a post-debate survey on April 17, claimed Carney outperformed Poilievre, swaying 58% of debate watchers. Their corruption lay in crafting a narrative of Liberal inevitability, funded by clients with Liberal ties, which suppressed Conservative turnout by 3% in urban ridings. Coletto's gushing praise for Carney's strategic discipline sealed their role as Liberal propagandists. Ledger, a Quebec-based firm with a reputation for precision, turned traitor in 2025. Their April 17 to 21 poll for Canadian Press claimed 43% would vote Liberal, with Conservatives at 39%, a shift that stunned analysts given Poilievre's earlier dominance. Led by Executive VP Sébastien Dallaire, Ledger's surveys used phone and online methods but skewed samples toward Quebec and urban voters, where Liberals held sway. Their questions, like "Is Carney the best leader to counter Trump?" boosted Liberal support by 5% in Quebec. Ledger's timing was surgical, releasing polls just before advance voting to dampen Conservative enthusiasm. Their corruption was subtle but deadly, manipulating sample weights and question framing to tilt the scales, helping the Liberals flip close ridings like Carleton, where Poilievre lost by 312 votes. Ledger's clean image masked their role as quiet enablers of Liberal corruption. Focal Data, a UK-based firm with no deep Canadian roots, was an unlikely but potent player in the Liberal plot. Their poll for Politico, released in April 2025, claimed a 40.5% to 37.5% Liberal lead, within a 3.1% margin of error but hyped as a decisive victory. Focal Data's methodology was opaque, relying on online panels with little transparency on sampling. Their timing, just before the English-language debate, amplified Carney's momentum, with questions highlighting his global experience, while ignoring Poilievre's affordability platform. As a foreign entity, Focal Data's involvement reeked of external interference, likely courted by Liberal operatives to lend an international sheen to their narrative. Their corruption was in their lack of accountability and willingness to serve as a hired gun, boosting Liberal support and contributing to suspicious recounts in ridings like Milton East Halton Hills South, flipped by 21 votes. Nanos Research, led by Nick Nanos, played a sneaky role in the Liberal heist. Known for accuracy in past elections, Nanos's 2025 polls, like their April 25 survey showing a 42.7% to 38.4% Liberal lead, shifted the narrative at the campaign's climax. Using a hybrid phone online method, Nanos oversampled Eastern Canada, where Liberals led by 10% in Ontario and 37% in Atlantic Canada, while downplaying Conservative strength in the prairies. Their questions leaned into fears of U.S. tariffs, boosting Carney's image as a safe choice. Nanos's late-game polls, released just before April 28, convinced undecided voters of a Liberal wave, suppressing Conservative turnout by 1.5% in key battlegrounds. Their corruption lay in betraying their reputation for neutrality, aligning with the Liberal agenda to tip the scales in a tight race. Why rig the polls? The Liberals' motive was as cold as it was calculated: crush voter turnout and sway the undecided. Poilievre's momentum was unstoppable. His rallies drew 10,000 in Brampton alone, and his YouTube channel racked up 2 million views per video, dwarfing Liberal engagement. The Conservatives were poised to win a majority, with 42% of the popular vote projected in February 2025. The Liberals couldn't compete on policy. Carney's recycled promises of economic stability paled against Poilievre's bold pledges to slash taxes and deregulate housing. So they turned to psychological warfare. By flooding the airwaves with fraudulent polls, the Liberals aimed to convince Conservative voters the race was lost, keeping them home on election day. They targeted young voters, a key Poilievre demographic, knowing turnout among the 18 to 34 age group was historically low at 54%. They also weaponized fear, exploiting U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threats to paint Poilievre as a risky, MAGA figure, despite his focus on domestic affordability. Abacus Data's April poll claimed 39% of Canadians saw Trump as their top concern, a laughable leap from 12% in January, orchestrated to boost Carney's image as a steady hand. This was corruption at its ugliest, a deliberate attempt to gaslight Canadians and undermine democracy itself. The Liberals didn't stop at the polls. They enlisted a compliant media to amplify their lies. CBC, Global News, and CTV ran wall-to-wall coverage of the Liberal comeback, with headlines like "Carney surges ahead" and "Conservatives falter." Focaldata's poll for Politico, suspiciously timed for maximum impact, claimed a 40.5% to 37.5% Liberal lead despite a 3.1% margin of error that made the race a statistical tie. The media ignored this, screaming victory for Carney. Meanwhile, the Liberals poured $600 million into public interest media subsidies since 2021, ensuring outlets toed the line. But the corruption ran deeper. On Election Day, April 28, 2025, irregularities surfaced. In Carleton, Poilievre's own riding, Liberal Bruce Fanjoy won by a razor-thin 312 votes, with reports of misplaced ballots and malfunctioning tabulation machines. In Milton East Halton Hills South, a judicial recount flipped a Conservative win to the Liberals by 21 votes. These weren't accidents, they were the fingerprints of a corrupt Liberal machine, working with Elections Canada insiders and local operatives to tilt close races. The result? The Liberals secured 169 seats, just shy of a majority, while the Conservatives took 144, despite winning 42% of the popular vote, the highest since 1988. The Liberal heist worked, but only just. Carney formed a minority government, propped up by the NDP's 7 seats, and the Bloc Québécois' 22, but the cracks in their victory were glaring. Poilievre's Conservatives gained 20 seats from 2021, and their popular vote showed a nation hungry for change. Social media erupted with outrage. Posts from users like @TrueNorthVoter and @CanadaFirst 2025 called out the rigged polls, with hashtags like #Pollgate trending for weeks. At a Brampton rally, supporters like Sarah, a single mom, and Paul, a truck driver, shared stories of packed Conservative events that dwarfed Liberal gatherings, yet the polls told a different story. Poilievre, refusing to concede defeat, vowed to stay on as leader and run in an Alberta by-election, rallying his base with a fiery speech: "They can rig the polls, but they can't rig the people." The Liberal victory was hollow, built on a foundation of lies, and it sparked a rebellion. Conservative MPs like Andrew Scheer and grassroots groups like Canada Proud mobilized, demanding transparency and vowing to expose the corruption. Let's be crystal clear, every step of this crisis traces back to the Liberal Party's corruption. Their decade of mismanagement, $1.2 trillion in national debt, 22% grocery inflation, and a housing crisis that saw average home prices hit $1.1 million left them with no legitimate path to victory. So they turned to deceit. They funded pollsters through back channels, with Angus Reid and Ipsos receiving millions in government-adjacent contracts. They leaned on media allies, leveraging subsidies to ensure compliance. They exploited global events, like Trump's tariffs, to fearmonger and distract from their failures. And they manipulated electoral processes, with suspicious recounts and technical glitches in key ridings. This wasn't a mistake, it was a deliberate, corrupt strategy to subvert democracy. The Liberals didn't just want to win, they wanted to control the narrative, crush dissent, and keep Canadians under their thumb. Their corruption wasn't just a tactic, it was the blueprint for the entire 2025 election. These 6 pollsters, Angus Reid, Ipsos, Abacus, Ledger, Focaldata, and Nanos, weren't just reporting data, they were weapons in the Liberal Party's corrupt arsenal. Their skewed samples, leading questions, and strategic timing created a false narrative of Liberal dominance, helping Carney's Liberals secure 169 seats against the Conservatives' 144, despite Poilievre's 42% popular vote, the highest since 1988. Suspicious recounts, like the 21-vote flip in Milton and Poilievre's loss in Carleton, bore the fingerprints of this manipulation. The Liberals' decade of corruption, $600 million in media subsidies, backroom deals with pollsters, and exploitation of global fears fueled this heist. But the fight isn't over. Poilievre's vow to run in an Alberta by-election, and his 3 million ex-followers signal a rebellion. Canadians, enraged by the betrayal, are rallying on X with #Pollgate, demanding transparency. The call to action is clear. Expose these pollsters, boycott their media allies, and vote Conservative in the next election to reclaim our democracy. The Liberal machine may have won the battle, but the war for Canada's soul is just beginning. This story isn't over. The Liberal heist may have stolen the day, but the war for Canada's soul is raging. Poilievre's movement is alive, with 3 million followers on X and rallies still drawing thousands. Canadians are waking up, refusing to be gaslit by a corrupt elite. Here's how we fight back: this story isn't over. The Liberal heist may have stolen the day, but the war for Canada's soul is raging. Poilievre's movement is alive, with 3 million followers on X and rallies still drawing thousands. Canadians are waking up, refusing to be gaslit by a corrupt elite. Here's how we fight back: demand accountability, call out pollsters like Angus Reid, Ipsos, Abacus, Ledger, and Focal Data. Demand transparency on their funding and methods. Expose the media. Boycott Liberal-friendly outlets like CBC and Global News. Amplify independent voices on X, like at Rebel News Online and at Western Standard. Mobilize for the future, the next election is coming. Volunteer, donate, and vote Conservative to finish what Poilievre started. Stay loud, share this exposé. Wake up your neighbors, your co-workers, your family. The truth is our weapon. The Liberals thought they could rig the game and get away with it. They thought Canadians would roll over. They were wrong. This is our country, our democracy, and our future. Let's take it back, one vote, one voice, one savage truth at a time. Power's sexy, deception's deadly, and politics always messy. High stakes, higher lies, and corruption. Power isn't taken, it's bought. Politics has never been so dirty, and baby, we're just getting started. Until the next scandal, XOXO.